On January 5th, 1066, King Edward the Confessor died, and he didn't have an heir. Now, that's a huge deal, not just because it kicks off the Norman conquest, but because it was the end of a massive era. The dynasty that had literally built the Kingdom of England was, after more than 500 years, finally done. So this is the story of how they pulled it off, how they built a nation right from the ground up. I mean, just look at that timeline. We're talking about a reign of about 550 years. To put that in perspective, that's longer than the time between the Norman conquest and today. This wasn't just another royal family. These guys were the architects of a nation, and they started with almost nothing. So that's really the big question we're tackling here. How did this one dynasty, the House of Wessex, rise up from the ashes of a fallen empire, beat out all their rivals, survive a devastating invasion, and then somehow forge the political thing we now call England? Okay, so to understand their rise, we have to go back, way back. The story of Wessex really starts with the collapse of an empire. When the Roman legions packed up and left Britain in 410 AD, they didn't just leave a province behind. They left a gigantic power vacuum. And this really just paints the perfect picture. Roman Britain had been a place of, relative order, with roads and walls and people who could read. But after 410, it just fell apart into what historians call sub-Roman Britain, basically a chaotic free-for-all with competing warlords and tiny little kingdoms. This was the perfect environment for invaders, like the Angles and Saxons, to sail over and start carving out their own territory. So out of all this chaos, this figure named Cerdic emerges. He's seen as the founder of Wessex, setting up a kingdom around 519. But here's the really weird part. His name. Cerdic isn't a Germanic name, it's an anglicized version of the Brittonic name Caradus, which kind of suggests he might not have been a simple Saxon invader, but maybe someone with a foot in both worlds. A fascinating little twist, right? Now, Cerdic's new kingdom of Wessex wasn't the only player on the field. Not by a long shot. For centuries, England was this patchwork of rival kingdoms called the Heptarchy, and for a long, long time, Wessex was far from the top dog. Kingdoms like Mercia, right in the middle of the country, were way bigger and more powerful. Just as Wessex was finally starting to assert itself and punch above its weight, a new threat showed up from the north, a much, much more dangerous one. The Vikings, or as the English chronicles called them, the Danes. And what started out as a few coastal raids quickly turned into a full-blown invasion. And you can just see the terrifying escalation here. In 865, this great heathen army lands. This was a force unlike anything anyone had ever seen. And they just systematically started taking the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms apart. Northumbria, gone. East Anglia, fell. Mercia, shattered. By 878, there was only one kingdom left standing, Wessex. And right at this moment of absolute total crisis, the crown falls to a guy who was never ever supposed to be king. Alfred was the fourth son. His three older brothers had all ruled and died one after the other. He was a scholar, not a born warrior, and he inherited a kingdom that was right on the verge of being completely wiped out. And it almost happened. Alfred was beaten and forced to run, literally hiding out with a handful of followers in the swamps of Somerset. I mean, this is the absolute lowest point. But somehow, from there, he rallied his forces, launched a surprise attack, and won an absolutely stunning victory at the Battle of Edington in 878. That was the turning point. Alfred had saved his kingdom from total destruction. Alfred's incredible victory wasn't just about survival, though. It was the foundation, the rock upon which his kids and grandkids would build something completely new, a single, unified kingdom of England. So, this is the key thing to remember about Alfred. His legacy is as the Great Defender. He stopped the Viking conquest cold. He started reforming his kingdom with new laws, new defenses. But, and this is a big but, he did not rule a united England. He just saved the idea of it. The job of actually expanding fell to his son, Edward the Elder, working with his incredibly formidable sister, Ethelfled of Mercia. He went on the attack. He systematically started conquering Danish-held lands like East Anglia, and just kept pushing that border north. And that brings us to Alfred's grandson, Aethelstan. Now, this guy is arguably the most important and yet most overlooked king in this entire dynasty. He's the one who really truly finished the job his grandfather started. I mean, his list of achievements is just staggering. He crushed this huge coalition of his enemies,
We're talking Vikings, Scots, Welsh, all of them, at the legendary Battle of Brunanburh. He was the first to actually be called King of all Britain in official documents, which shows a whole new level of ambition. He didn't just unite England, he was projecting its power across the entire island and into Europe. But as you know, creating a unified kingdom is one thing. Actually holding on to it, that's a whole other story. After that golden age of Alfred, Edward, and Ethelstan, the dynasty's grip on power got a lot less certain. They were plagued by internal conflicts and, yeah, new threats from outside. The decades that followed Ethelstan were messy. You had this rapid turnover of kings who didn't last very long, and that weakens the kingdom. All this instability led to the disastrous reign of Ethelred the Unready. His terrible decisions, like ordering the St. Brice's Day massacre of Danish settlers, basically poured gasoline on the fire with Scandinavia and led directly to a full-on Danish conquest. And just like that, for about 20 years, the House of Wessex was out. They were deposed, England was ruled by the Danish king Canute the Great, and it became the crown jewel of this massive North Sea empire that included Denmark and Norway. It really seemed like the Wessex story might be over for good.
But it wasn't. The dynasty would have one last chapter. And its legacy? Well, that would prove to be way more resilient than its hold on the throne. This is where we see why all their hard work was so important. So in 1042, after Canute's empire fell apart, the son of Ethelred the Unready, a man named Edward, who would later be known as the Confessor, was invited back from exile to take the throne. The House of Wessex was back. But Edward's deep piety and, most importantly, his lack of an heir, well, that's what set the stage for the massive succession crisis of 1066. So what was their ultimate achievement? What was the final result of all that work? This slide really says it all. They took a chaotic collection of warring tribes and turned it into a single, unified kingdom. They created a shared political identity, a central monarchy, a legal framework. This is the whole point. And get this, their bloodline is still with us. Through a really complex web of marriages and successions over the last 1,000 years, the current British monarch, King Charles III, is a direct, though very distant, descendant of Alfred the Great. We're talking something like 33 generations. That lineage is just an incredible testament to their lasting impact. And this, right here, is the key takeaway. When William the Conqueror invaded in 1066, he wasn't conquering a bunch of squabbling little states. He conquered England, a single, unified, valuable prize. The House of Wessex had already done all the hard work of building it. The Normans just moved in. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Was the creation of England just inevitable? Something that would have happened anyway, maybe under some other dynasty like the Mercians? Or was it the specific, hard-won, almost miraculous achievement of this one remarkable family, forged in the fires of that Viking invasion? It's a pretty fascinating question to think about.